Well, good morning. Whether you're joining us here in Barrie, whether you're joining us online in Midland, in Orillia, we're excited to have you here for the kickoff of this brand new series called It's Just a Phase, so don't miss it. And I hope you brought your tissues today for the bumper video this morning. And we're going to be talking about family over the course of the next 4 weeks. And family is a daunting topic to take on because the truth is we've all come from different family experiences. We all currently have different family experiences. And no matter whether you're a parent or a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle or you have a sister or a brother, we all have family in our lives that we're trying to navigate. And sometimes what we can do with family is we can say, well, I just want to get through this phase, or I can't wait till this phase of my family is over. But what if we embrace the phases of family? What would that look like? So today I'm going to be talking a little bit more to parents, but also grandparents and those of us who have influence over the lives of kids. And then next week I'm going to be talking about conflict, how to have a family fight, and how to fight for your family. And then the third week, I'm going to be talking about relationships outside your family and how to create a family rhythm that makes a difference. And then the final week is going to be a Q&A. So we'll cover for parents that week all the stuff like, what about screen time? Or even empty nesters, like how do I invest in my kids when they're not living at home? All of those sorts of things. So it'll be a Q&A week, the final week. So we're really looking forward to it. Now, to start, of course, I'm going to talk about family. I should introduce you to my family. So here they are. This is my family. This is my wife, Leslie, my son, Carter, who's 10, and my son, Gavin, who is 13. And Leslie and I are trying to figure out this whole journey of what it means to lead a family. And I learned very, very early on that there's no manual. I've looked, there's no manual for parenting kids, and I've been trying to figure it out since the very beginning. In fact, I remember the day we brought Gavin home. So Leslie had a few complications, so we're in the hospital for about 4 or 5 days. And then they said, you're ready to be parents. And they sent us out of the hospital. And they sent us home, and we got home. And if you are a parent here today, I think the lowest rung on the ladder of a parent is food and water, right? And shelter. If you can give your kid those 3 things, you've done the first rung of parenting. And we got home, and we got Gavin home, and it was time for Leslie to feed Gavin. So we're trying to figure out how to breastfeed Gavin. And 3 hours went by, 4 hours went by, 5 hours went by, 7 hours went by. And at this point, everybody's screaming, right? The baby's screaming, we're all crying, none of us know what to do. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, even the most basic thing I can't do. And at a certain point, I'd had it. I was like, enough is enough. And so I picked up the phone, and I called the hospital, and I said, we need to return with my son. And the nurse said to me, we don't take returns. And she said, you're going to have to go to the emergency department. And I said, I'm not going to the emergency department. Like, you can hear that, right? Like they're screaming in the background, we need something now. And I said, I'm on my way there. And so we negotiated with her, and we actually went through like some side door, and she snuck us in and like figured out how to feed Gavin. We had no idea. He was happy. And then we got back in the car, and we're driving home that night. I remember thinking to myself, it was late. I remember thinking, I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea what I'm doing. And the truth is, what I've learned about parenting, I still have no idea what I'm doing. We're all trying to figure it out. So as we talk about family, you're probably now asking the question, okay, so if you can't figure it out, why are you the person on the platform talking to us about family? This is a good question. Well, there are a couple of things. One is, at Connexus, we're passionate about family. In fact, you might not be aware of this, but when you came in this morning and you saw our orange signs and our orange logos and orange t-shirts, that color is symbolic to us. And I'll tell you what it's symbolic of. You see, red for us represents the home, the heart of the family. That's a powerful influence. Yellow is the light of the church, also a powerful influence. 2 powerful influences. But when you combine those 2 influences to create the color orange, it's that much more powerful, right? Lady Gaga is powerful, right? And Bradley Cooper is powerful. You put them together, unbelievable song, right? If you're aware of that. Pie is great. I love pie. Ice cream is fantastic. Pie and ice cream, even better, right? When you take not just two powerful influences, but when you combine those influences, something powerful can happen. And one thing I believe in at the bottom of my heart is the unbelievable opportunity we have to minister to speak life into the next generation. And that as kids move from our church, that not only will they be followers of Jesus, but they will help others follow Jesus. And we're passionate about that. And our small group leaders are in all environments as well. Now, the other reason I'm up here is I used to be a high school teacher. Some of you might not know that. And then went into ministry and worked with students. So that's a 15-year stint. I work with high school students and middle school students. My wife, Leslie, has been a guidance counselor for over 20 years. We were counting the other day, and we're actually into the thousands of students now that we've interacted with. And we've journeyed with lots of families through lots of heartache and lots of celebration. And we've seen students who were 12, 11, 10 come all the way up, and now they're getting married and having kids. In fact, we both have colleagues at work that we were investing in when they were 13. And we've seen the choices that families have made. We've seen the choices that parents have made. And we've learned a lot along the way. Now, one of the things we've learned is this, is that God isn't into perfect pictures. He's about writing better stories. That if you're here today and you're thinking, man, my family is a disaster. My son, my daughter, they're making all kinds of choices I wouldn't make. And now they don't live under my roof anymore. Now what am I going to do? My granddaughter, my grandson, they're making choices I wish they hadn't made. Or my house is just chaos. I mean, it's just chaos all the time. And there are a lot of days I think I'm not going to make it through the day. I want you to know that God isn't into just perfect pictures. He's not into perfect pictures. He's into writing better stories. He wants to redeem your family. He wants to write a new story in your family. And the reason you might be here today is to hear one thing. There's hope for your family. That God loves your family more than you do. And He wants to write a better story in the lives of your family. We truly believe that. Now you might say, okay, Jeff, you're talking about God isn't into perfect pictures, but what about that Photoshop photo of yourself you just showed earlier with your whole family? That looked like a perfect picture. Well, life isn't always perfect at our house. And when my son was 3, it was Halloween. And I find Halloween to be one of the most stressful parenting times of the year. Because your child, you have to find a costume, and they need to wear that costume to school, and then it has to be a fantastic costume because you want it to look good on Instagram, and then you want to make sure that you always have these dreams of I'm going to make the costume myself, and everybody's going to be impressed, right? And then the night before, you're like, I have no costume. And then you're running out to the store, and there's nothing left. It's like half a Barbie and a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, and they don't go together. And you're like, this is a disaster. And then you come home, and then we're getting the kids to school, getting them in their costumes. They came home, and then it was time to go out for Halloween. And we were getting our kids all dressed up for Halloween. And Leslie and I are having an argument about who's going to take the boys out for Halloween and who's going to stay home and give out the candy for Halloween. So now we're having this argument. And she ends up taking them. And she takes them out into the snow. It was snowing that night on Halloween. And this is a picture of Carter back at that time. I know, right? And he's a kangaroo, if you can't tell. And we did not make this costume. And then what happens is Leslie's taking him out for Halloween. We've had this terribly long day. We've just had enough. She's at the 3rd house. And he says, Mommy, my feet are cold. And she looks down, and he's in his socks. He's in his socks at the 3rd house, standing in the snow. And other kids are like, he has no boots on. And we're like, oh my gosh, they're going to take him away. And they took him home. And I remember how long that day felt. And some of you feel like parenting has long days. And some of us know that parenting has even longer nights. And the thing that I've learned is this. The days can feel long, but the years are short. This year, my boys both came to us and said, we don't need you to take us out for Halloween. We're going to go with our friends this year. Can you drop us off at their house? Just like that. It goes from Taylor Swift to Toy Story like that. Fortnite, from Forts to Fortnite, just like that. I mean, it goes boom, 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 boom. Fast. The days can feel long, but the years are short. And the truth is, you have less time than you think, but you have more influence than you realize. That whatever age or stage your kids are at, whether they're 5 or 25, the time does go by quickly, but statistics say time and time again that there's no greater influence than the influence of a parent. It's greater than culture, it's greater than peers, it's greater than teachers. The greatest influence on the life of a child is a parent. But there's no doubt that the time goes quickly. And the question is, how do we make the most of our time? And how do we make the most of our influence? Because we want to make the most of it. And so I want to start by acknowledging this in this series. We're all at a phase. There are phases in life. There's your 20s, your 30s, your 40s. Those are phases. Empty nesters, grandparents, those are phases. I'm living at home with my parents in my 20s. That's a different phase. They're all different phases. And kids are at different phases. You've got 2-year-olds and 12-year-olds, and they're at different phases. We're all at a phase. Your family right now is at a phase. We're at the taxi driving, drive the kids everywhere phase. We're all at different phases. And I want to define for you what a phase is this morning. A phase is a time frame in someone's life when you can leverage distinctive opportunities to influence their future. A phase is a time frame in someone's life when you can leverage distinctive opportunities to influence their future. I remember when I was in my early 20s, that was a phase I was in. It was a phase where I could eat anything I wanted. And it was a phase where I owned a car that my grandfather had given me, and I could go anywhere, anytime that I wanted. My early 20s. And I was finishing teacher's college, and I was at a camp, serving at a camp in the summer. And a mentor of mine sat down with me and said to me, Jeff, instead of teaching, have you ever thought about full-time ministry in a church? And I started to pray about it, and my life started to change. I was in the right phase. A phase is a time frame in someone's life when you can leverage distinct opportunities to influence their future. A 5-year-old is not at the same phase. You're not going to get the same result if you sit down with a 5-year-old and say, I think God's calling you to ministry, right? It's a specific time where you have the opportunity to influence. And the question is, how do you leverage the phase that your family is in today? How do you leverage the phase your family is in today and keep your focus on God's bigger story? That's really the question we're answering in this series. How do you leverage the phase your family is at today, whatever phase that is? Whatever age your kids are, your grandkids are, your nieces and nephews are, the phase you're at with your parents. How do you leverage the phase that your family is at today and keep your focus on God's bigger story, the bigger story that He's writing? And what I'm going to do today is the first part of this message is going to be a little more theoretical, and then the second part we're going to kind of get to the heart of it. And I want to start with the first part. How do you leverage the phase your family is in today? And often as parents, we get caught up in this question. What do you want your child to know in every phase? What do you want your child to know in every phase? Can we get that up? What do you want your child to know in every phase? We get caught up in this all the time. And it's not totally our fault. When your child is born, one of the first things they tell you is what percentile they're in for their weight. So immediately I'm like, okay, this is a competition. I didn't know it was a competition. It's a competition. And oh, well, they're in the 95th percentile or the 80th percentile. I'm not saying that's not a valuable thing to know, but immediately there's, oh yeah, we need to know where they're at weight-wise. And our whole culture is built that way, right? You're at a play date and the mom's like, yeah, you know, my 3-year-old son Liam is reading novels, and you're thinking, is my son supposed to be reading novels? Like, when do you start to read? Oh yeah, my son went on a bike ride with his dad. Oh, my son's still on a tricycle or still has training wheels. Do they know what they're supposed to need to know? And you get caught up in the like, are they keeping up? Are they learning the things that they're supposed to know? Do they know the things that they're supposed to know? At this phase, should they know this instead of that? When are we supposed to have the talk about dating? When are we supposed to have the talk about sex? Is that at like 5 or 15 or like, I don't know where that is. When are they supposed to know certain things? But do you know what I think is a more powerful question for us to ask? is, what do you want your child to know about God at every phase? What is it that they need to know specifically about God at every phase? See, at every phase, a child has a specific need and a spiritual opportunity. At every phase, they have a specific need and a spiritual opportunity. And we've been working with an organization called Orange for a decade now. And a number of years ago, we started this project where they worked with all kinds of academics, psychologists, teachers, theologians, read everything they could, did tons of energy, time, and money into a project to figure out, what does a child need to know about God at every phase? And I'm going to give you a taste of that today when we talk about phases. And the first phase I want to look at is preschool. Preschool is age 0, if there's such a thing, all the way up to kindergarten. And in preschool, kids are just starting to develop. And I want you to think about someone you know in each of these age categories. Maybe it's a niece, a nephew, a neighbor, a grandkid, whoever it might be. And at preschool, as they're figuring out how everything works, how their legs work, how their arms work. You know, at 2 years old, a child is changing so much, they don't change that much physically again until they're like 12, 13. There's a lot going on. And what you need to do in that stage, I'm going to give you a word for each, is to embrace them at that phase. Embrace their physical needs. Embrace their physical needs. And as you love them and as you care about them, you're introducing them to God the Father who loves them. When you say, hey, God made you and God loves you, you're going to be a picture of that as you love them and as you care about them. It's also your opportunity to introduce them to the family of God. You know, something we take really seriously here is in Wombaland, we know that when a child arrives in Wombaland, we are the welcome mat to the family of God. How we care about that child, how we love that child, is a picture of who God is, and a welcome mat to the family of God who loves them. And every child at every age is asking an invisible question. And if you know that invisible question, it really helps you as a parent. And the question that a 2-year-old is asking, for example, is, am I able? Am I able? Right? I want to do it. Can I do my button? They're trying to do it. I want to zip it up. They're trying to help you load the dishwasher, right? You're loading the dishwasher and they want to help you, right? And the parents of the 13-year-olds are like, where did that go, right? Am I able? Can I help? And you're embracing their needs, guiding them along the way, lovingly. The second phase is the elementary phase, grade 1 to 5, and that's where they're getting interested in all kinds of different things. In my house, it's Lego and Star Wars and all that kind of stuff. And I have a son in grade 5. I left this morning. He was reading like 100 facts you need to know about X. He must have like 100 books about the 100 facts. It's unbelievable. They get interested in all these different things. And you need to engage their interests. Engage their interests. And this is a great time for a conversation about how God made you and how he wired you and how he's made you interested in different things. And how as being a part of the church, when they come on Sunday, they say, wow, that person's good at singing and that person's telling a story and my small group leader is really good at this. And what they're doing is they're starting to understand that the family of God is made up of all different kinds of people. And that God's character can be trusted in this stage. Now, what's happening in this stage is as they figure out their interests, there's a lot of comparison going on. For example, a grade 2 boy, his invisible question is, do I measure up? You see, in preschool, when we say, okay, kids, draw a flower, everybody draws a flower, and we put them all on the wall, and we say, aren't all of those flowers beautiful? And then what happens is when they're in grade 2, we say, everybody draw a flower, and they all draw a flower, and we put them on the wall, and then we put a ribbon on them, or we put a grade on them. And all of a sudden, somebody is better at drawing than someone else. And a comparison crisis arrives. I remember my son Carter at this age when we were driving in the car, he was in grade 2, and he's like, you know, this person's the best at music in my class, and this is the best person at sports, and this is the best. He's trying to figure out, how do I measure up? And we need to engage their interests and help them understand more of the diversity of the family of God. Then there's the middle school phase, grade 6 to 8. And this is a phase now, as a parent, Were you moving more from, hey, I'm in control here, to I'm more of a coach? The transition is beginning. And what happens with a middle school student is they're on a journey of trying to figure out, do I make this faith my own? And you need to affirm them on that journey and let them ask those questions. The secret to parenting a middle schooler, one of the secrets is freak out on the inside, don't freak out on the outside. Let them ask their questions. Let them explore. And just try to keep calm. And the invisible question they're really asking is, who do I like? And the truth is, the answer probably is whoever likes me. They're looking for acceptance. They're looking for affirmation. They're looking to make their faith their own. And they start to value the community of the family of God, of the local church. They start to figure out, hey, there's community here, people I like to connect with. The last stage, phase is probably my favorite, is high school and beyond. And in high school and beyond, you want to mobilize their potential. And you're thinking, yeah, mobilize. You're thinking, yeah, mobilize them to pay rent, mobilize them to pay the insurance, put gas in the car finally, like it always comes back empty. I get it. But mobilize their potential when it comes to their relationship with God. You want them to continue to ask their questions. You want them to continue to try to figure out, do I believe this? In fact, the question they're asking is, do I believe? When it comes to faith. And the truth is, what they're really asking in a lot of cases is, do I believe you? As my mom, as my dad, do I believe you when it comes to faith? Am I going to make this faith my own? And then you want to mobilize them to personal ministry. That's why here in the high school stage at Connexus, we have something called CREW, which is a leadership development for high school students. LDP, a leadership development program for your gap year. We run something called Lead You for people in their 20s who are trying to understand what it means to be a leader. We realize that at this stage, you want to mobilize students, mobilize kids to have a personal ministry and a passion for who God is. Now, the truth is, there's a lot to know. And at every age, there's a different phase. And you're thinking, how am I going to know all this? Like, I'm not a psychologist. That's what I would say. And so we want to make sure that we help you. And so next week, for the parents here, when you pick up your kids at any age, we're going to give you a phase book for the age that your child is at. So we've purchased all of these. This one is for the 7th grade. And when you pick up your child, this book is going to help you understand what they need to know about God at that phase. So if you have more than one child in a program, you'll get more than one of these whenever you pick them up. So those are going to be available next week, and we're excited about giving you that so that you know what they need to know about God at every phase. So then the question is, okay, Jeff, how do you leverage the phase your family's in today? We talked a bit about that. And then how do you keep your focus on God's bigger story? How do you keep your focus on God's bigger story? Well, I want to share with you something that Leslie and I have learned along the way. It's that how you see your children shapes how you choose to guide their story. How you see them shapes how you choose to guide their story. As both people who've worked in high schools, we've sat with a lot of parents. And I've sat with parents who sat down and said, hey, what courses does my son need to take to become an engineer? And I communicate with them, your son hasn't passed math in 2 years. And they're really, really good at art and music. And they say, yes, but what math courses do they have to take to become an engineer? And engineering is a great profession. That's what my dad did. What does my child need to do to become a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, whatever it is? They've got a specific story in mind because they see their child in a certain way. I think the better question is, how does Jesus see our kids? How does Jesus see your kid? No matter the age they're at. Well, Jesus interacted with kids on 2 occasions, and I want to look at that this morning. In Mark 9, we see Jesus interacting with kids, and it says this, then he put a little child among them. Taking the child in his arms, he said to them, Anyone who welcomes a little child like this on my behalf welcomes me. And anyone who welcomes me welcomes not only me, but also my Father who sent me. What Jesus is saying is, when you welcome a child, when you greet a child, when you engage a child, when you love a child, you're engaging me, you're loving me. That's pretty heavy stuff. The way you treat kids is how you're treating me. What he's really saying is, our kids are made in the image of God. The truth is, we all think our kids are special, but they're not. This is what makes them truly special. That they're made in the image of God. Then he interacts again, and in Matthew, you see another interaction that says this. One day, some parents brought their children to Jesus to lay his hands on them and pray for them. But the disciples scolded the parents for bothering him. But Jesus said, "Let the children come to me. Don't stop them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to those who are like these children." And Carrie's been talking in a series called Alt Kingdom about the kingdom that God is establishing. That it's a different kind of kingdom, built on love and grace and mercy. And what Jesus is saying is, children are a big part of that. Children are an important part of that. Your kids are an important part of that story. See, if we're going to see our kids as Jesus sees them, here's how I think we need to see them. First of all, see your kids as made in the image of God. If I'm honest with you this morning, I spend more time pointing out the fact that my kids are sinners than I do that they're made in the image of God. I spend more time pointing out the things they do wrong. I spend more time pointing out their mistakes. And I spend less time pointing out the fact that they're made in the image of God. And I think the truth is, they already know they make mistakes. And I think the truth is, they already know there's sin in their lives. And you know how I know that? Because you don't need to tell me. I already know. You already know. We all know. What if I started pointing out the image of God in my kids' lives? How when they run, how when they play, how when they treat each other the way that they should, how when they get in the corner of one of their friends, how when they respect one of their teachers, it's because they're made in the image of God. What I see in you is God in you. Because we want to see them as made in the image of God, to be molded into his likeness. And then on mission with his movement, the kingdom that he's establishing. Now when you look at this, you might say, listen, Jeff, my kid is 25, 26, 35, and they're not anywhere near to being on the mission with God's movement. And that's okay. Then I would say you need to start here. The phase you're at is seeing them as made in God's image, pointing out how they're made in his image. And then maybe they're asking the big questions. Well, Dad, I don't know if I believe what you believe. I'm not sure I'm in when it comes to faith. I used to think that, but now I'm not sure anymore. And they're asking a lot of questions. That's them being molded into his likeness, figuring out, is this really for me? Do I believe you? And then on mission with his movement, that they have a personal ministry. Another way of putting this, if we were to sum all this up for you, so that you had it kind of in one sentence, it's really this. Imagine the end by focusing your priorities on what matters the most. Imagine the end by focusing your priorities on what matters the most. I've had the privilege of taking lots of students on compassion trips to work with different orphans around the world. And what happens on these trips is so many parents pray that God would speak to their kids. And they pray that he would just be in their corner, he would speak something to them, that they would walk away changed. And not on every trip, but on most trips, I'll have a parent who will come to me and they'll say, man, God really spoke to my son or my daughter. And I said, that's great. I'm so excited that that's happened. And then they say, but there's a problem. I said, what's the problem? They want to be a missionary. They want to go overseas and help orphans. That's what they want to do with their life now. I don't want that. I want them to live here. I don't want them to go there. That sounds dangerous. And I'm sure the salary isn't very good. See how it starts to shape how you see your child shapes your story? My wife Leslie and I have wrestled with this a lot. What does it mean to imagine the end? What does it mean to focus our priorities on what matters most when it comes to our kids? And a friend of ours named Reggie Joyner shared this sentence with us that has been incredibly impactful for us. And it says this: 100 years from now, the only thing that's going to matter is your child's relationship with God. I've had the privilege of journeying with a lot of people, not a lot of people, I don't want to say a lot, it sounds exaggerated, a number of people at the end of their life. And I would say that this is true. And my wife and I have been trying to figure out, what does that mean for our parenting? And a number of years ago, I realized that my kids were really into sports. Like, my boys are really into sports. And we could tell early on that sports were going to be part of the trajectory of our life. And we knew that at some point, being on mission with God's movement as a part of our church was going to conflict with their sports. And so we decided that we were going to make a decision early on that if our kids were playing sports, that if it was on Sunday morning, that they wouldn't participate, that they would be a part of the mission of what's happening here. Because that's our priority. We're passionate about seeing people meet Jesus. That's what our family is fighting for. And that was easy for a bunch of years because there was no conflict. So there was no problem. When my son Gavin was 10, an entire season of soccer was scheduled on Sunday morning. And it was hard. And we had to have the conversation with him about it. And it was difficult. But he got it. He says, I get it, because we'd said it for years. He knew. And so we had the conversation with him, and for the entire season, he practiced 4 days a week and never played a game. We were allowed to play in tournaments on Sundays, because there's only a couple, and we want to honor that commitment to the team, but not those games. And you know what I said to Leslie almost every week? What if he falls behind? What if he doesn't learn what the other players are learning? What if they all get ahead of him in soccer? What I was really saying was, what if he misses what he needs to know at this phase in his development? But the real question was, what does my son need to know about God when he's 10? And he needs to know that God being a priority isn't just something that we talk about, but it's something that we do with our lives. But the season was over, and Gavin and I were having a conversation about it. He brought it up, and he said, yeah, I understand why we do it. And he serves in Wombaland here on Sunday morning, and that's part of his passion. He's committed to those kids, and if he's going to commit to them, he's going to be in their corner. So we're talking about Wombaland and the impact he was making and trying to celebrate that. We're having a conversation about it. And he said to me, Dad, I get it. I get why we make this decision, that it's a priority for us to gather with the people of God and to see people's lives change. We want to be on mission with God. Then he said to me, so how come when we go on vacation, we don't go to church? He had a good point. So now, when we're on vacation, we try to go to church. We've been to some weird churches. We went to a church, we were at a tournament, and we were able to go to church on the Sunday morning, and there was a choir there. He's like, what are they doing? Why are all those people wearing robes? He only knows what he sees here. And am I saying that you need to do what we did? I'm not. I'm not saying that. It's not my place to kind of just lay a giant guilt trip on you, but it is my place as your pastor to challenge you to make the family of God a priority. You need to make the mission of the church a priority. There's something of eternal significance happening here, and 100 years from now, it's the relationship with God that's going to matter to us. So what I want to encourage you to do today is don't miss the phase that you're in. Don't wish it away. Don't try to get through it. You want to leverage that phase for the things that matter the most, for the things that matter the most. So if you're here today and you're a parent, this translates pretty quick. If you're a grandparent, I think the same thing. Don't miss the phase your grandkids are at. Leverage it for what matters the most. If you're living with your parents and you're in your 20s or 30s and you're going, well, what about me? What's the story God's writing right now in your family? What's the phase your family is at? How do you leverage it for the things that matter the most? Because I know that God has better stories and bigger stories for you and your family. I believe that in my heart of hearts, that he who began a good work in you will be faithful to complete it. So I want to give you 2 questions today. And I want you to pray these 2 questions. And the first one is, God, do my priorities line up with the story that you want to write in my family? Do my priorities line up with the story that you want to write? Maybe for a grandparent, this means a lot more FaceTime with your grandkids who are out in BC. And maybe you're putting a little money aside to fly out there more often than you usually do. Maybe for you, it's as an uncle and an aunt, you're going to invest in the kids around you and spend more time doing that. And as a parent, it means sitting down and looking at your priorities and say, hey, do these things line up with the things that matter the most? And the second question is this. What does my family need to know about God at this phase? God, what does my family need to know about you at this phase? Here's the thing. If you pray this prayer, we believe in a God who speaks today. And if you pray the prayer, God, what do you want to say to my family today? That he will speak to you. And you might say, that sounds weird to me. I never prayed before in my life. Well, then what do you got to lose? You might as well try it. Because we believe that God is supernatural. And if you came here today and you're not even sure about God, if there is a God, don't you hope he is supernatural? Because I believe that he will speak to you. God, what does my family need to know now, today, at this phase? What are you saying to us? Don't miss the phase that you're in, but leverage it for the things that matter the most. Don't wish away the phases. Don't numb yourself by Netflixing your way through them. God, what do you have to say to my family today? What's the big story that you're writing? Because here's my promise to you, no matter how broken the pieces are, there's a God who wants to write a better story. Let me pray for you. God, we come to you today, and we recognize that family life is difficult, that relationships are difficult, but that you are present, and that you love our families more than we do, that you love us more than we love ourselves. And I pray that you would speak to us about the things that matter the most. I pray that you would speak to us about the plans and the love that you have for our family. We might not be able to see the whole journey, but help us see that one next step. God, I pray that as we look and we reprioritize, that your Spirit would be in the midst of that. God, I just thank you for all of the people in our church who are so passionate about families, and pray that you would be speaking to them and encouraging them each and every day. And I pray this in your name. Amen.